She tried to live unseen, until redemption returned the moment her call sign was exposed. Living as a civilian and trying to erase her past, she works in silence to avoid any reminder of the war. Everything changes when a local investigation uncovers military records mentioning her long-lost call sign. After a mass kidnapping, authorities seek her help, forcing her to confront old traumas. Leading a flawless rescue strategy, she saves the children and captures the criminals. Her redemption comes when she realizes that, even while trying to hide, her purpose was still greater than her fear. Before we begin, hit subscribe and tell me what city you're watching from. Every new voice helps keep these American redemption stories alive. Welcome to the mission now. Let's begin. Amelia Ward woke up every day at the same hour, made the same weak coffee, and walked to the same small grocery store where she worked in the stockroom. Routine was her armor. She lived behind boxes and shelves like someone hiding inside silent trenches. She never raised her voice, never stayed long in conversations. To the small town, she was simply Amelia, the quiet woman on the morning shift. Her apartment reflected that self-erasure. The walls were bare, except for an old calendar and a window that allowed in a gray square of morning light. The only out-of-place object was a metal box tucked inside her closet. Inside it were fragments of a life she tried to bury. One picture, faded photos, and a military ID card covered with black tape that hid her call sign, a code she should never hear again. Amelia avoided the box, avoided remembering, avoided feeling. But sometimes flashes cut through her defenses. Radios crackling, shouts for coordination. Maps glowing under flashlight beams. And then the tribunal. The cold stare of Colonel Kessler, the man who signed the verdict that ended her career. The silent betrayal that shattered everything she believed she was. That day, however, something was different. The store's TV displayed a news segment about rising coordinated crime in the region. The reporter's voice sounded distant, but certain terms landed sharply in Amelia's mind: tactical patterns, synchronized activity, military-style movement. Her body recognized them even if she didn't want to. Her past hovered like a shadow she could feel, but refused to face. When she left work, she didn't notice the black car parked across the street. Two figures inside watched silently, noting her routines, her schedule, her patterns. Amelia walked home unaware that, after years of trying to vanish, she had been found not as a civilian, but as someone whose name was still buried in restricted archives. 2 days earlier, inside the local police department, an officer had opened an old file linked to a supposedly extinct military call sign. A glitch in the system had revealed part of, including a civilian named to belong there, Amelia Ward the Jabrows. Within hours, the case had been escalated to someone far above local jurisdiction. Agent Cole Maddox received the alert at his desk. When he examined the file, he saw blacked-out names, nearly erased reports, and, much the sainted, a call sign stamped in red. "Do not disclose." To him, that meant the opposite: investigate until you learn what they're hiding. He called an old contact in the military. The response came tense. If that call sign resurfaced, something is very wrong. Meanwhile, Amelia returned home, ate instant noodles, and stared at her silent phone. No messages. No invitations. No world outside needing her. That was exactly how she wanted it. Unnoticed. Forgotten, irrelevant. But the silence would not last. As she lay down, a faint static hiss came from her old bedside radio, a hiss struggling to form a transmission before dying out. Amelia turned away, forcing herself not to react. She didn't know that the interference wasn't random. It was the first signal that her past was being activated. And whether she wanted it or not, it was coming back for her. The police department was chaotic that morning. Reports came in rapidly. Suspicious patterns appeared on rural roads, and unmarked vans were sighted near schools. None of it seemed alarming individually until everything aligned into a single organized pattern, a military pattern. And somehow, it all pointed back to one resurfaced name. Amelia Ward. Maddox pored over old mission logs, searching for any shred of clarity. Buried among redacted pages, he found the call sign, partially crossed out but still visible enough to show someone tried very hard to erase it. He contacted a retired general, hoping for insight. The man's tone dropped to a whisper. Her call sign was tied to Operations Kessler classified personally. If it's reappearing, something is moving behind the scenes. Amelia, meanwhile, followed her routine at the grocery store. A coworker mentioned that police had been asking questions about older residents in town. Amelia pretended not to notice, but the words stuck in her mind like thorns. Her chest tightened. Could they be asking about her? Impossible. No one should know who she was. That afternoon, while she stocked shelves in the back, footsteps sounded behind her. She turned and saw a tall man with a firm posture and investigative eyes. Amelia Ward? It took her 3 seconds to answer, long enough for her to realize he already knew. Depends. Who's asking? Agent Cole Maddox. I need to speak with you. They sat at a small table in the storage room. Maddox placed a folder down but kept it closed. Your name resurfaced in files that were never supposed to be accessible. Amelia tried to keep a neutral expression, but her hand trembled. He opened the folder slowly, revealing the call sign buried under layers of red ink. Her face lost all color. I haven't used it in years, she whispered. Maddox leaned forward, but someone used it again. And that doesn't happen by accident. He slid photos across the table, unmarked vans seen circling schools. These abductors are using tactical patterns from a specific military unit. And guess who trained that unit? Amelia did not answer. Maddox closed the folder. Your signature resurfaced. That's why I'm here. Amelia gripped the table hard. She knew, without question, that this was no coincidence. It was a message, or a threat. When she left the store, she saw the black car again. But this chimney someone inside it was watching open, and they recognized her. The news spread through town before police could even react. 3 unmarked vans had parked quietly near an elementary school. Minutes later, 12 children were missing. Panic erupted, parents screaming, teachers collapsing into tears, phones ringing nonstop. But Amelia felt something different, a cold, sinking recognition. When the report flashed across the store's TV, Amelia dropped the box she was holding. Her body reacted before her mind did. The pattern was unmistakable, synchronized extraction, controlled timing, no unnecessary violence. This wasn't amateur crime. It was a military-style operation. As she exited the store, she found Maddox waiting, breathless. They took 12 kids. They're using military tactics. I need your help. Amelia shook her head and walked past him. No, I'm not part of that world anymore. Maddox grabbed her arm. They're using methods from your unit. She froze. Just then, a mother stumbled into the street, clutching a school photo. My daughter, please, someone help. Amelia looked away, but the mother fell to her knees, crying, please. Maddox stepped closer. Amelia, you know what they're doing. You know where they'd go. Her voice trembled. I can't go back. You're not going back, he said. But those kids won't come back unless someone like you steps in. That was the moment her last defense cracked. Amelia didn't utter a word. She simply walked toward the police station. And for the first time in years, she entered a war room. The station transformed into an improvised command center. Maps everywhere. Radios screaming with overlapping reports. Officers scrambling to understand the situation. Amelia walked in quietly, but the atmosphere shifted the moment she picked up a marker. and approached the map. She reorganized everything: routes, timings, vulnerabilities. She eliminated the weak theories and traced 3 likely destination points. Her presence was no longer that of a civilian. It was the presence of a former leader. Emma Brooks, leaning on her crutch, watched from a corner, but this time she wasn't just a bystander. After a moment of hesitation, Emma approached and pulled a laminated sheet from her bag. "I kept this." "Ust Chinkazi." She handed it to Amelia. It was an old mission report, and the signature at the bottom was Rowan's. Only it wasn't exactly right. A slight shift, a small contradiction, Emma had noticed years ago. Amelia looked at Emma, stunned by her bravery. "You kept this even though it could have incriminated you?" Emma nodded. "I kept it because I knew you didn't deserve what happened." Carter entered the room and recognized Amelia instantly. The two exchanged a silent acknowledgement. "You're really back," she replied softly, "only for now." With Emma's document, the tactical pattern, and the abductor's vehicle routes, Amelia identified the most likely location, an abandoned warehouse on the East Road. Maddox asked, "You're certain?" Amelia answered without hesitation, "If I were them." "That's where I'd be." The team mobilized. But as Amelia reviewed the map once more, she felt it deep in her chest. She wasn't just tracking abductors. She was tracking ghosts. The East Road was rough and dimly lit, dust rising behind the convoy as they approached the warehouse. Amelia stepped out first, scanning tire tracks and footprint patterns on the dirt. Every detail felt like déjà vu, not because she had been here before, but because the enemy was using methods she once mastered. Inside the perimeter, she angled her flashlight toward the gate. It wasn't forced open. It was lifted using leveraged techniques. This was done by someone with training, she murmured. Maddox watched carefully, impressed. So they really are using military knowledge. Amelia stepped farther inside, analyzing the shadows. This isn't just military. This is structured. This is, she hesitated, my old unit's doctrine. Carter exchanged a grim look with her. Your unit. Or someone who studied it very closely. Emma arrived shortly after, breathing heavily but determined. There's something else, she said, pulling another memory from her backpack. This place, the layout. It matches the kind of staging area we used during that last operation. Amelia felt her pulse quicken. Yes, it matched perfectly. Too perfectly. Then they found something that made everything click, abandoned crates of diverted military gear. The exact kind that only a specific command sector had access to. A sector controlled by Colonel Kessler. Amelia ran her fingers over the crates. This wasn't random. Someone with authority is running this. She closed her eyes, realization sinking in. The operation that ruined my life was just a test, and now they were repeating it. Only this Chimmy the target children inside our house. Shadow swallowed everything the flashlights couldn't reach. The air was thick with dust, the silence heavy enough to crush the nerves of the officers behind Amelia. She walked ahead, her senses sharpened by instincts she had long tried to suppress. Every echo, every draught of air, every vibration in the floor told her a story. And none of those stories were good. She paused suddenly. Maddox froze behind her. She lifted her hand, signaling stillness. Beneath the faint hum of old machinery, she detected fragile breaths. Soft, barely their whimpers carried through cracks in the walls. Children. They were close. Amelia followed the sound to a scratched metal door. Patterns around the lock caught her attention, not the work of a professional, but someone who'd been taught just enough to be dangerous. They put the kids here first, she whispered. Carter nodded, then main group. Inside the room, 3 children huddled behind a fallen table, shaking. When they saw Amelia, they ran toward her with desperate, muffled cries. She knelt, her voice gentle but steady. "You're all right now. I've got you." Maddox watched, noticing the duality in her, the warrior's precision and the guardian's tenderness. Once the children were safe with paramedics outside, Amelia returned to the corridor. They split the hostages. The rest are being used as leverage for escape. Maddox asked, "So how do we get to them?" Amelia scanned the rusted pipes, the pattern of airflow, the way the walls connected. Then she spotted it, a maintenance tunnel. She crouched and pulled aside a corroded grate. Line narrow, passage disappearing, in darkness Carter stared. "I thought these were decommissioned." Amelia shook her head. "Forgotten is better than decommissioned." Maddox peered into the cramped tunnel. "Where does it lead?" She replied with chilling certainty, directly behind Rowan. The tunnel was claustrophobic, but Amelia entered without hesitation. Each step was a descent into a past she had buried. Training drills, night raids, missions she never discussed. The memories pressed in on her with the same weight as the tunnel walls, reminding her who she had been and who she might need to become again. This tunnel didn't just lead to the enemy. It led to the reckoning she had avoided for years. The tunnel ended behind a stack of broken crates. Amelia emerged slowly, signaling for silence. Beyond the wall, harsh white lights cast warped silhouettes. She knew those formations, the symmetry of their movement, the intervals between their patrol cycles. It was painfamiliar, cospertly, that Amelia nada. This pattern exists in only one unit. Maddox frowned. "Your old unit?" "Yes, but only a handful of people mastered that formation." They approached the crack in the wall. The next room was filled with armed men, not soldiers, but men trying to imitate them. Their stance was sloppy, their discipline inconsistent, but their tactics were unmistakably military. Someone had trained them, someone with deep knowledge. The answer came seconds later. A voice echoed through the warehouse, cold, unwavering, marked by authority. It was Rowan. Amelia closed her eyes for a moment. The betrayal she felt years ago rushed back like a physical blow. Rowan had been her second in command, the one she trusted most, the one who testified against her, the one who stood silently beside Kessler as she was stripped of her name. Maddox watched her carefully. "You know him." Amelia didn't look away from Rowan's silhouette. "He studied me. Studied everything I did." Suddenly, Rowan's radio crackled, and another voice came through, deeper, colder, far more dangerous. "Major Rowan, finish the operation. Eliminate evidence. And if Amelia Ward is present, ensure she does not leave alive." Amelia's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice, as well as her own Colonel Kessler, the man who orchestrated her downfall, the man who buried her career, the man who was still pulling strings. This wasn't coincidence. This was a purge, and she was the final loose end. Amelia stepped back, gripping the wall as the full weight of the revelation hit her. Kessler had never retired quietly. He had continued his operations in the shadows, using Rowan as his instrument. Maddox saw the tremor in her breath. "So it was him all along," she nodded slowly. "He didn't just sabotage me. He was building something, and I was in the way." Rowan paced the room, tense, listening to the last instructions from Kessler. When the transmission ended, he stood unnervingly still, scanning the shadows. Then he turned his head sharply, as if sensing something. "She's here," he muttered. Maddox whispered. How could he know? Amelia's voice was barely audible. "He always felt my presence in the field. He studied my movements. He learned me." Carter clenched his jaw. "So what now?" Amelia inhaled through her nose, regaining control. "Now, we take back the narrative." She signaled the team to position themselves. Officers flanked the entrances. Carter prepared a silent takedown route. Maddox checked his weapon. Through the crates, Amelia watched Rowan ordering his men prepare North extraction. Kessler wants everything erased. No evidence. No witnesses. Maddox's face drained of color. He's going to blow this place. Yes, Amelia said quietly. Rowan always follows orders. Then Rowan looked through the gap between crates and locked eyes with her. His smile was a slash of triumph and venom. So you did crawl back, he murmured. Amelia raised her chin. You never should have touched those children, Rowan smirked. Kessler told me you lacked the stomach to finish what you start. The mention of Kessler sharpened something inside Amelia. Funny, he said the same about you. Rowan's smile faltered. For the first time, she saw fear behind his confidence. The warehouse controlled, sealant stormy. Amelia's team moved with surgical precision, a stark contrast to Rowan's erratic recruits. In seconds, 3 abductors were subdued without a sound. Amelia glided across the floor with purpose, every step calculated, but Rowan acted quickly. He always did. He grabbed a child and aimed his gun at Amelia. You want this to end. It ends with you. Amelia stepped forward slowly, let her go. Maddox and Carter froze, waiting for any opening. Rowan used the child as a shield, backing toward the far exit. His expression twisted with resentment. You stole everything from me, Ward. She kept her voice even. I earned it. You envied it? Rowan's laugh was jagged. Kessler said you were weak, that I deserved command. Amelia's eyes hardened. And you proved him right by doing his dirty work. Rowan's grip faltered. That brief, microsecond of distraction was all Amelia needed. She surged forward, knocking his weapon aside and pulling the child to safety. Carter scooped the girl away while Rowan pulled out a military-grade combat knife, the same model they once trained with. This ends how it should have ended years ago, he growled. Amelia stood her ground, exactly, with the truth exposed. Their clash was fast and vicious. Rowan attacked with desperate fury. Amelia countered with controlled precision. She disarmed him once, and he ran, fled into the night like a wounded animal. And Amelia followed. Rowan's footsteps pounded through the corridor as he stumbled into the open air. Amelia chased him, Maddox and Carter sprinting several meters behind. The warehouse lights flickered behind them like dying stars. Rowan whirled around, swinging his blade with trembling hands. Amelia dodged effortlessly. He struck again, sloppy. Frantic, she blocked with her forearm and twisted his wrist, nearly disarming him. You always had what I deserved, he spat. Respect. Command. The loyalty of the unit. Amelia circled him carefully. You didn't want to lead. You wanted to be admired. Rowan snarled. Kessler promised me your position. Promised I'd take command if you fell, so I helped to make sure you did. Amelia felt a cold calm wash through her. I figured as much. Rowan lunged, a clumsy, rage-driven attack. She sidestepped, slammed her palm into his elbow, and the knife clattered to the ground. He staggered back. This isn't over, he hissed. It is, she replied. And everyone will know. Instead of fighting, he fled again, disappearing to a narrow hallway. Amelia sprinted after him. The final confrontation was inevitable and closer than ever. The corridor was narrow, the shadows deep, and every echo of Rowan's footsteps carried a taunt. Amelia sprinted after him, her movements steady and controlled despite the chaos. Maddox kept close behind, his weapon raised, while Carter covered the rear. The air smelled of rust, dust, and the metallic tension of unfinished battles. Rowan knew this warehouse intimately. He turned corners sharply, leveraging dark pockets of space to mislead them, knocking objects down to create deceptive sounds. Amelia recognized the strategy instantly. It was designed to exhaust pursuers mentally before ambushing them physically. "He's channeling us," she whispered. Maddox replied. "To what end?" Amelia's expression hardened. "To a terrain he thinks he controls." They entered a deeper storage chamber full of crates, broken shelves, and narrow aisles that formed a maze. Emma's earlier clue echoed in Amelia's mind. The layout mimicked the staging zones from their old operations. Maddox raised his flashlight. Carter scanned the shadows. Amelia inhaled slowly, letting her senses map the terrain Rowan was shaping. A clang erupted. Carter pivoted right, but Rowan struck from the left, smashing a metal bar into him. Carter blocked, but stumbled. Maddox aimed, but Rowan darted back into the darkness. Always one move ahead, one breath away from capture. A light exploded, showering sparks and plunging the room into dimness. Amelia closed her eyes for a split second. In darkness, Rowan was louder, his breath uneven, his injured leg dragging slightly. She triangulated him by sound alone. He lunged from behind a crate. Amelia intercepted him mid-strike, using his momentum to send him crashing into a stack of boxes. They toppled, scattering debris across the floor. Frank climbed, bleeding. "You always had to be better," he hissed. Even now, Amelia steadied her stance. "This isn't about better. It's about stopping you." He swung again, another racket, Astrid. She deflected, twisted, and nearly took him down. But instead of finishing the fight, Rowan broke free and sprinted toward an exit corridor. His desperation filled the air like smoke. Amelia exhaled, her pulse pounding. The chase wasn't over, not yet. She wasn't chasing a criminal anymore. She was chasing the final chapter of her own buried truth. Darkness blanketed the outskirts of the warehouse as Amelia and the others emerged outside. Smoke still curled upward from the explosion, painting the sky in hues of ash and orange. Rowan was losing ground. His tracks were uneven, the limp growing heavier, but he was still dangerously unpredictable. Maddox's radio crackled sharply. Thermal hit. Movement in the northern woods. He showed Amelia the image, a wounded figure moving slowly through trees. She nodded. "That's him. He's not running anymore. He's repositioning." They followed the trail through tall weeds and scattered debris. Emma arrived in a secondary unit, clutching something. "I found this by the south entrance," she said, handing Amelia a scorched access card. Amelia froze when she saw it, not because it belonged to Rowan, but because it bore Kessler's clearance level. Carter then approached with a half-burned folder. This survived the blast. Amelia opened it carefully. The pages inside revealed falsified mission reports, altered by Rowan, validated by Kessler. Evidence of the operation that destroyed her career. Maddox leaned over her shoulder. "This is enough to arrest Kessler outright." Amelia closed the folder slowly. "It's enough to expose everything." But there was still Rowan. They reached a rocky incline. At the top, silhouetted against the rising sun, Rowan stood, bruised, shaking, clinging to a detonator with trembling fingers. He wasn't acting like a soldier anymore. He was acting like a cornered man with nothing left to protect. "Don't come closer," Rowan shouted. Amelia stepped forward anyway. "This isn't control. Rowan, this is fear." He barked a weak laugh. Kessler promised me everything." Maddox raised his voice. "Kessler was arrested an hour ago." "It's over." Rowan's expression cracked disbelief, then horror, then emptiness. He truly had nothing left. The detonator in Rowan's hand flickered red. The warehouse erupted in a massive internal explosion. The ground vibrated beneath their feet. Maddox shielded Amelia instinctively, but she tore away from him, her face stricken with sudden realization. There are still kids inside. She sprinted toward the burning structure, ignoring every shouted warning. Flames roared from collapsed beams. Smoke poured out in suffocating waves. Maddox tried to block her path. "Amelia, you'll die in there." Her voice cut through the chaos. "If I don't go, they will." Inside the inferno, Amelia crouched low, crawling under collapsing rafters. The air was thick, scorching her lungs. She shouted, "Can anyone hear me?" A faint sob answered her, then another. She followed the sound to a corner where 3 children huddled behind a table. Their faces were blackened with soot, eyes wide with terror. Amelia knelt and gathered them close. "You're safe. Stay, Ree." She lifted the smallest into her arms and led the other 2 by hand. The main exit collapsed behind them with a thunderous crash. Amelia didn't flinch. She pivoted left, remembering the building's old maintenance layout, a memory she wished she didn't still possess. Through a shattered window, Maddox and Carter appeared outside, shouting instructions. Maddox pulled the children out first, then reached for Amelia. She stumbled out, coughing violently, her clothes burned and skin streaked with ash. The children clung to her, crying. She held them, tears blending with soot. Maddox approached, voice cracking. "You saved them." All of them, but Amelia's eyes drifted back to the tree line. Rowan was still out there. And this chimishit. Morning light crept across the wreckage as Amelia walked among the ruins. Helicopters circled overhead. Officers moved through the debris collecting evidence. But Amelia wasn't looking for paperwork. She was looking for meaning, for closure. Her boot brushed against something metallic. She knelt. It was a half-melted military data safe, the kind used for classified movement logs. "This was Kessler's," she whispered. Maddox approached with another thermal scan. "He's still moving north. Barely." Carter joined them, carrying a second burned folder. Amelia opened it. Inside were damning documents, flows of illegal gear, names of intermediaries, altered chain-of-command signatures, a decade of corruption laid bare. Then Emma approached, holding a small drive she had found. This was near the detonation point. Amelia plugged it into a laptop inside the mobile command center. Encrypted audio logs appeared. Kessler's voice filled the room. "Rowan, eliminate Ward. Remove the evidence." Phase 2 begins after extraction. Amelia's jaw clenched. Her expulsion. The false testimony. The sabotage. It was all orchestrated. Maddox rested a hand on her shoulder. "This is enough to bury him forever." She nodded, fire burning behind her eyes. "Now we finish the rest." They followed Rowan's trail until they reached the top of the rocky rise. There he stood, exhausted, wounded, cornered, still holding a gun he could barely lift. "Stay back," he cried. Amelia stepped toward him deliberately. "You don't give orders anymore." Rowan's voice trembled. "You don't understand." "Kessler." Maddox interrupted. Firm and cold, Kessler is already in custody. Rowan's face crumpled, not in anger, in despair. For the first time, he realized he had been a disposable piece. Rowan attempted to flee one last time, stumbling down the slope. His leg gave out. He collapsed on the dirt, crawling, trying desperately to reach a fallen gun nearby. Amelia, Maddox, and Carter closed in. Rowan grabbed the weapon. Maddox fired. The gun spun out of Rowan's hand, and he screamed, clutching his wrist. Carter pinned him effortlessly. The fight was over. Amelia stepped forward slowly. He looked up at her, defeated. "Kessler promised me everything, and he took everything from you," she answered quietly. Hours later, inside a regional command center, the truth unraveled. Evidence lined the tables. Screens displayed Kessler being escorted away in handcuffs. Officers typed reports documenting the conspiracy. Amelia stood in the center of it all, not accused, not doubted, but vindicated. A ranking official entered. "Captain Amelia Ward," she said deliberately, "you were the victim of a targeted sabotage. Your record will be cleared. Your call sign reinstated." Amelia lowered her head, overwhelmed. Carter smiled softly. Maddox folded his arms proudly. Emma wiped away a tear. The official continued, "And if you choose, there is a consulting position open. High-risk recovery operations. We would be honored to have you." Amelia walked to the window. Outside, the rescued children played under supervision, laughing despite the trauma. She watched them for a long moment. She remembered the quiet life she built to hide from her shame, remembered the fear of ever being needed again, and remembered the moment she ran into fire and chose to save strangers. Her answer came softly but firmly, "I accept, but I work on my terms." As she stepped outside, one of the children ran to her, hugging her tightly. Amelia knelt and embraced the child. Eyes closing as peace, true peace, touched her for the first time in years. She had tried to stay invisible, but her call sign, her legacy, refused to die. Redemption didn't just find her. It brought her home. If this story moved you, then you belong here. At Redemption of America, every story carries a truth. Broken doesn't mean finished, and shame is not the end. So, make sure you subscribe, leave your comment about the moment that hit you hardest, and share this video with someone who needs to remember what redemption looks like. Until next time, stay strong, stay honorable, and never forget, America redeems its own.